I think I've been singing this song since high school.
Wow.
I'm not like a singer, just to let you know, Rashida.
With Nurse Angel Harris, we're trying something different today. Now, she might not consider herself a singer-sanger, but the moment I heard her sing in the studio, I could feel the room vibrate with her passion and purpose. A powerful moment that can be felt throughout her entire story.
If you can talk, you can sing. If
Exactly.
you can move, you can
Yeah.
dance.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Music is powerful.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go. Why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for my heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
Welcome to Black Care Matters, the show where we honor the unique experiences of Black nurses working in the Pacific Northwest. I'm your host, Rashida Quinn. In recognizing that Black lives matter, it's crucial that the care for these nurses also matters. Cultural white supremacy has had a detrimental impact on the American healthcare system. Each nurse's story reveals rich insights towards the possibilities of a better future. Today, Angel Harris takes us on a journey through her impactful 22-year career in nursing. From confronting the overt presence of racism in the segregated South to navigating Oregon's more subtle forms of discrimination, she shares how these experiences have shaped her work. Along the way, she discusses her role as president of the local chapter of the NAACP and how it influenced her advocacy, even in healthcare. It's a soul-stirring conversation that inspires us all to confront biases no matter who we are, only on Black Care Matters.
Tell me about your relationship to that song.
Well, it's a classic gospel song. We would sing in church all the time. I feel like the world is just a lot. And so when things are really hard, that song it's like an anthem.
Yeah.
It kind of helps me to remember, like, why I do what I do and to remember that I am cared for.
Do you feel like music is an extension of how you care for others?
Yes. When I did patient care, I would always sing to my patients. So if I had an anxious patient, which a lot of times I did, because who wants to be in a hospital bed, I could offer them a song. And it just helped them to relax, and it just kind of brought them back. And it was like so beautiful to see them literally relax in their bodies.
That's so beautiful. And it makes me think of music and the Black experience, how historically we have had music as an anchor, as a map, literally to freedom, that the songs have carried so much of our story of resilience. So when you talk about a patient relaxing in their body or music passing through and still providing a space of peace, it makes me think of the cultural connection to music that is embedded in the Black experience.
But there's just something about music that just transcends all the things.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's so rich.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little about your growing up years. Until 8th grade, you lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you never really experienced racism until you came to Oregon.
So in Vicksburg, there's a lot of Black people there. Over 50%. It's also very segregated. If it's segregated, you're mostly going to be surrounded by Black people.
Right.
And as a child, you only know what you see. And when I went to school, I would see white people and white kids, but it still didn't register. We don't see them outside of school. We don't get to go to each other's house. And so although there was a lot going on around me when it comes to race and racism, I wasn't aware of any of it. Segregation being one of them was very much real, but I didn't understand that. When I came to Oregon, in 1990 as an 8th grader.
What brought you to Oregon?
My aunt moved here in 89, and we would always be over at my aunt's house when we lived in Mississippi. And we wanted to visit her. And my parents agreed. So originally we were just coming here to visit. We took the Greyhound bus.
From Mississippi?
From Mississippi, me, my sister, and my brother. We did not know what we were getting ourselves into. I love my parents. They didn't know. We didn't understand how long it was going to take to get here. And we got, I think, $5. We had food in a cooler. It's going to take you like 5 days to get there, not realizing that that's not going to last you.
Wow.
So
as a 7th grader going into 8th grade.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was 13.
You've shared a lot about the differences of having a predominantly Black neighborhood, and then you come to Oregon and it is predominantly white. But you made a point to be inclusive when you were starting to make friends and moving towards high school.
Yeah.
Where did that inclusivity come from?
Looking back, I was probably more invisible. I was very much a quiet kid, just kind of kept under the radar. And maybe it was because I did feel left out sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But I've always felt like I wanted to make sure if there's somebody in the corner, I want to make sure that they understand that they can come over here, right? If someone's on the playground by themselves, I want to make sure that they know that they don't have to be by themselves,
Yeah.
you know? I wanted my table in the cafeteria to be that diverse space.
You mentioned the nickname Rainbow Girl.
Yeah.
How did you get that nickname, and what do you think about it now?
I was cool with all these different groups of people.
Yeah.
At first, they thought I was kind of fake because they're like, is this real? Is she real?
Oh, is
and then
it
they got
genuine?
to know me. Is it genuine? Right?
Yeah.
And now, again, hindsight, I'm like, that was fair. Because there are people who it's not genuine. But I truly was like, I want this experience with all the people. And so they would just call me in that sense, you know,
Yeah.
Rainbow Girl.
Well, I love that because it really shines a light on a natural ability that I think is unique. And it breaks apart the sort of monolithic story that Black people aren't aware of the diversity around them or have a singular purpose in terms of how they explore reality. And what you're sharing is that from a young age that you were a person that was willing to learn and connect with as many different cultures as possible. So when you were in high school, towards senior year, kind of came into a passion around caring professions and the nursing. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So my teacher, he's like, you should do this apprenticeship. This white man saw there was something in this young lady, right? I took him up. I was like, okay, I'll look into it. Well, nursing was on the list of apprenticeships.
Uh-huh.
It sounded pretty interesting. So that summer, the end of my junior year, I ended up getting to literally see all the different facets of a nurse. After that summer, not only did I want to be a nurse, but I wanted to take care of the elderly. I had an advisor who questioned whether I should be a nurse. And I didn't know the history of nursing at that time. So I didn't understand that as a Black woman, it wasn't normal, especially here in Oregon. There weren't a whole lot of Black nurses just running around.
An advisor
Yes.
was explaining this to you?
She was doubting whether nursing would be my path forward. And the saving grace for me is that I had a community in Corvallis at my church. And also there was a department at OSU called EOP, Educational Opportunities Program. And they work with like first generation college students and underrepresented populations. They were very supportive of students.
Yeah, so you had to lean into that.
So instead of leaving university like some people did, right? Because when you get discouraged, like, well, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to do.
Of course.
When people get in your ear, right? And you don't know who you are and you don't really know what you can do. You just believe them.
Right.
But I had these people in my church, people who were like, you can do this. And I'm like, I can. So I just stopped going to her and started going more over to them.
Yeah.
There was me applying to colleges and this thing again of like, microaggressions, just this undertone of like, oh, so you want to be, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't really understand it because again,
still coming into the Oregon vibe and
Oregon vibe, and then who am I anyways, right? Like, and why are people responding this way to me? I thought they would be excited that I wanted to be a nurse, right? So it's really, really kind of confused by it all.
Well, I think you're touching on a reality that I've heard a lot of our guests share about the nuances that are built into how racism and white supremacy functions in Oregon.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than in other states where segregation exists and they have a huge racialized history where both African Americans and white folks were experiencing that racialized history together. Oregon has the history of an intentional all-white state.
Right.
And the experience of Black Oregonians came much later. Yeah. And so it can, in and of itself, be a sort of gaslighting experience where you are given these subtle messages that you're not at the same level that your white counterpart is, that you don't have the same prestige, or you're not expected to be in this space. But it doesn't come straight to you with that type of language. It is these, these questioning experiences, and it can create a difficulty in navigating for a Black person how to center yourself in that when nobody's telling you to your face, but you can feel it all around you. So, what you're describing is relatable for a lot of BIPOC people, especially Black folks.
And it totally makes you question, first of all, is it just you?
Right?
Are you making this up?
Exactly.
Because I can't say, Rashida exactly told me I shouldn't be a nurse. You didn't do that.
Right.
But what you said, how you said it, it comes off as, wait, do you believe in him? Without saying it.
Right.
So then you feel crazy because, she didn't say it. So it's in your head.
Yeah.
You made that up. And people will tell you that. So you just learn after a while to just discount and say, oh, Angel, you're overreacting. That's really not what they're saying. Right. So that's what I would do. I would just be like, oh, yeah, it's not really
I must
real.
have understood.
Those messages were totally there. I wasn't going to address it because it wasn't anything to address.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the hardest to do. I'm from Mississippi. So people be like, oh, you're from Mississippi? I'm talking about Oregonians, right? Oh, you're from Mississippi. They would always say that. And again, I didn't understand the history of Mississippi. I definitely didn't understand the history of Oregon yet. And apparently they didn't know the history of Oregon either, or they wouldn't have been talking about Mississippi that way. But in Mississippi, no one would do those subtle hints to you. You understood where you would stand. Versus in Oregon, it was just this, I couldn't put my finger on it. It was, what they call it, nasty nice.
Yes.
Or nice nasty.
Yes.
One of those.
Yes.
Right? Or someone would say a microaggression like, oh, you speak so well. I get that a lot. I still get that. How am I supposed to speak? You speak so well.
Right.
And sometimes it would just be me saying my name and then kind of a couple of words. And they were so impressed. And at first I thought, man, I'm really cool. And then I realized, like, oh no, because their bar was so low.
Oh, right.
For what I could do. That when I just did normal, they thought that was amazing. It really is cutting you to the heart, but they're smiling while they're doing it. So you think, well, they can't be mean because they're smiling. When people move here and they're new to our community, I'm always like, it's not you.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to think they're crazy.
And it really requires an extra type of power and strength and resilience that you're not taught in school because nobody's even acknowledging that it's happening to you. It brings to mind the extra emotional labor that is required to be successful, to trust that your intelligence is just as worthy as everyone else's. Yeah. And so here we are. And success is happening and you're moving forward and nursing does become a career that you love and you do end up working with the elderly, which was a goal of yours. Yeah. What about working with elderly patients was fulfilling for your heart?
I see our elderly community as resilient. We talk about like wisdom, right? But to live those years. And at the end of the day, they still have stuff to give. They still have knowledge. They still have creativity. They still have joy. Like they still have life to live, even in their hundreds. I see a person and it's beautiful. And even the ornery ones, like those are my favorite. What did one man say? He was like, I'm trying to scrub the brown off, and he would say this stuff. I wasn't even offended. It was more of like, let's have a conversation.
He would say to you that
he's going to scrub the brown off. Yeah. Which historically, if you think of some of the books that we read even as little kids, you see these books now, and that was one of the pictures, is trying to scrub the black off of the little boy. So he's going to try to scrub my brown off. We have a conversation about it, right? Because whether you're 20 or if you're 80, we can still have a conversation about this.
Well, this is a very unique approach that you're taking because you're describing racism in the patient care experience.
Yeah.
And for a lot of folks, receiving racist comments from their patients can be debilitating.
When I think about what I didn't know about being Black, and I'm a Black woman, what I wasn't taught about Black people, what I wasn't taught about living in Mississippi or what I wasn't taught about living in Oregon, how could I not relate to the same man?
How interesting.
The same stereotypes that he knew were also the stereotypes that some of us know as well. Maybe more than we want to think about, because when I say that people didn't believe that I was going to be a good nurse, it wasn't just white people, Rashida. Because that's the power of racism. You have to have people believe that they can't do it. If I can make you believe, Rashida, that you cannot do it because you're Black, I've won. I don't have to do anything else. So it's interesting that I, as a Black woman, didn't even pick up this stuff, that this was being fed to me, that there was going to be some internalized racism in my own self, meaning I was going to start believing those stereotypes.
By recognizing that we were all fed lies, we've all experienced this brainwashing on some level. I'm working just as hard as you are, white man, to unlearn that reality about myself. And I think you should be working hard to also be aware that there's a reality that you have to unlearn. And I think because the context of racism has had so much trauma baked into it. I mean, if we look at the history of chattel slavery, which in and of itself didn't exist in any other type of servitude around the world, nothing like it.
No.
a lot of times it makes it harder for Black people to create any space around the educational process of white people.
Right.
That's your work to do. To have the capacity to hold someone in their learning about something that inherently is more harmful for you than it is for them. That is a power. That is a spaciousness that is not afforded to everyone who's had the same trauma involved in their Black experience.
We all have our journey, right? For me, that's my story though, right? I would never tell a Black nurse to just give the person the benefit of the doubt and sit down and talk with them. That may not be where you are right now. Right? And then how dare I? It could trigger you to kingdom come. And for me, it is like breathing. It is like life-giving. It is like if there's one person who wakes up and who understands better and who can advocate for better, then I feel like I did something.
Yeah.
Right? But that's me.
Right. That's your unique capacity.
And that is for all people. And at first I thought it was bad. And I was like, no, this is my gift.
Yes.
Is that I understand that I needed those trainings. I needed to be a part of those DEI trainings. I got free when I learned about the history of this country. I thought it was my fault. I thought there was something I did and why people treated me the way they treated me. Rashida? I didn't know the history. This is not you. People are putting this on you. But the truth is, you are so much more. And then we can talk about all the amazing Black folks throughout history, and not just throughout history, who are living right now. Because people will have you thinking
that they're all gone.
That they all died. I hear that so much. We are here. Did you hear me say we are here? I didn't say they are here. We are. We are the new generation. I can't just sit back, especially as a nurse. I just can't be like, things are going to take care of themselves. Racism will just be fixed eventually. Harriet Tubman, that lady worked. She didn't just get freedom for herself. She went back. She had the nerve to go back and get some more. And then she went back and get some more. I want to see people just walking into their freedom.
Come into their liberation.
Yes.
Well, it kind of mirrors how you've described that, you know, as a nurse, initially you had sort of a box that you were putting yourself in. Yeah. And then there was a release of that where you started exploring, you know, your different capacities within nursing. What was that like for you?
Going into nursing, I thought nursing was more of like a servitude role. Looking back, I think that was also safety for me and comfort for me. Working in a nursing home, like those are the places where they're discounted. Like if you're a nurse and you work in a nursing home, it's kind of like you're not as good as the other nurses. But again, even as a little girl, right, I've tried to stay invisible because I've seen what happens to people when they're visible. Don't rock the boat. And so I think in my profession, I put that on as well. I put that coat on to say, if I do this job, I can kind of go in the background, getting to love on the elderly, but also hide. And then I realized it's like, you're making yourself invisible. But what about the fact that you've got a lot to say and you're not saying it because you don't want to rock a boat? So I did that in nursing too.
Yeah.
Right? 2012 happened and Trayvon Martin was murdered. And I thought I was pretty aware of like racism because racism for me was more on an individual level. I didn't know the systemic concepts of racism. My Black people who were on the front lines, I think they had a lot of grace for me, I think. Right? They didn't go, oh, Angel, she's hopeless. She doesn't get it. Because I would literally be like, what do you mean? I was still naive and like, there's only a couple of racist people in the world, right? Like if we talk to them, things will be good.
Yeah.
When you don't understand systemic, meaning you can't go to this school because of the color of your skin. So the whole education system was not made for you.
Right.
If you're not white. When you understand that, there's a whole different fight then. I'm also learning, wait a minute. I'm putting myself in a box in my personal life. I'm also putting myself in a box in my professional life. And when you realize that it's not you, it takes on a whole different level of like, how amazing am I really? I'm actually amazing.
Yeah.
Do you understand how liberating that is? And I start to realize it's like, Angel, you are not just a follower. You are a leader. So at the end of the day, we can talk about the system all we want, but if individually I'm prisoned here in my mind, I'm not going nowhere.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think about how what you're describing in a place like Oregon, where white supremacy has been so prevalent, and the comfort zone that white folks maybe aren't even aware of, that they feel moving through spaces, academic spaces, professional spaces, just general society, the grocery store, the bank, what have you.
The post office.
The post office, yeah. That level of awareness of coming into how other people don't have that immediate access to privilege or to understanding themselves as capable of reaching the heights of whatever they put their mind to, that waking up to that reality is difficult for us as Black folks, even more difficult for white folks to give us that space to see within ourselves, because there's a construct that rewards you if you don't push out of that status quo.
Right.
And so it's actually a lot of work, what you're describing and the evolution that you went through. I think a lot of us have relationships to the public murders that have happened throughout our community, from Trayvon Martin to George Floyd and Eric Gardner. Like, we have seen so many examples of the disregard for Black life that have triggered in us a new resilience and a new understanding of, wait a minute, I know that I'm more valuable. And I know that that person was more valuable than they were treated. And then we see it play out in such an aggressive political sphere. That family is forever marred by the loss of a child, and a police officer that did it is not even being held accountable. So what also does that say about the fabric of the system? That even in the face of something as atrocious as the death of a child, that the system is still going to hold in place the sanctity of whiteness. I think that as you talk about coming into your greatness and acknowledging your leadership, or how you've anchored the experience of community for other people in the Corvallis area as a Black nurse, and hearing those folks share that I didn't know how secure I could feel in my Blackness until I connected with Angel. I didn't know I had this part of me that was always there, that was meant to be a nurse, until Angel helped me see that. And then hearing your story of your own, how you did that for others, but you did that first for yourself. It's a beautiful addition to community. And I'm curious, is there any person in particular that was really, your angel?
There's so many people. There are people who stick with me. We've been friends for decades. And then there's people, I know them for a season, and they connect me to get to like this next level of things that I would never do. Like, I would never have been the president of the NAACP. Like, the work that I did was never work that I did alone. It was always about being in community.
Yeah.
I would have never saw it by myself. I would have never saw me by myself, because I couldn't see how amazing I was, but they did, right? And they came in all colors, which was even more amazing. This is why I am where I am, because other people opened doors for me, and I want to help open doors for other people. And I know that those same people are going to help open doors for other people. Do you see that?
Yeah, yeah.
And the train continues. Harriet Tubman, my girl, right?
Yeah.
And I found richness in being in community. And people have held space for me, Rashida, so much.
I mean, it's such a beautiful gift to inspire the next generation of nurses, what you're sharing. And, we know that representation in healthcare is a tremendous need, not only for the sustainability of the care providers to see other people who look like them, but for the patients as well. That makes a difference. And so what you're sharing is such a rich message of feeding the hearts of those who are interested in coming into the field. And so it's very, very powerful.
It feels like this is more natural. Like really loving people, and not just only loving them when they agree with you. It's not really adding up with my Black experience, me as a Black woman. So tell me more about what your experience is as a Black person, or you're as a white person.
It's such a beautiful wraparound sentiment as we started with the song, His Eyes on the Sparrow, and the care and the freedom that is passed through in that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much. And I'm so grateful to be able to hold space for that and to have shared it here on Black Hair Matters. And I know it will be a rich experience for so many listeners to hear the power of your leadership. And I hope that they're able to take some of that into themselves and also share it with others.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Angel's spirit of inclusion is a rarely elevated narrative about Black women and Black girls. The motif that exists in our culture often paints Black women as angry and bullheaded, and Angel is the exact opposite. I invite you to notice how many episodes you hear someone talk about a woman named Angel who encouraged them to reach deeper, follow their calling, and get involved in supporting the Black community. This is who they are speaking of. Nurse Angel Harris has impacted so many Black nurse leaders. Angel remarks that the bar is low for Black folks in Oregon, noticing how white folks comment that she speaks well, and realizing they just don't expect Black people to have proper diction. She speaks about people being willing to discuss the ways we all are affected by white supremacist expectations of Black people. Even Black people start to believe that we aren't as capable as white folks because our society is designed to reinforce this ideology, and it is extremely effective. I'm reminded of a moment from the April 29th, 2010 episode of On Being featuring Desmond Tutu, where he shared a racist thought that came to him while aboard an airplane.
I think, that we have very gravely underestimated the damage that apartheid inflicted on all of us. The damage to our psyches, the damage that has made, it shocked me. I went to Nigeria when I was working for the World Council of Churches, and I was due to fly to Jos, and so I go to Lagos Airport, and I get onto the plane, and the two pilots in the cockpit are both Black, and I just grew inches, It was fantastic because we had been told that Blacks can't do this. Right. And we have a smooth takeoff. And then we hit the mother and father of turbulence. It was quite awful, scary. Do you know, I can't believe it, but the first thought that came to my mind was, hey, there's no white man in that cockpit. are those blacks going to be able to make it? And, well, of course, they obviously made it. Here I am. But the thing is, I had not known that I was damaged to the extent of thinking that somehow actually what those white people had kept drumming into us in South Africa about our being inferior, about our being incapable, it had lodged somewhere in me.
We all must be vigilant in removing the toxic perspectives implanted within us by the backward concepts spread to oppress Black people. Take a moment to reflect on your own psyche. When have you had disparaging thoughts about people who don't look like you or do look like you? What were those thoughts? Where did they come from? As uncomfortable as this type of reflection may be, I believe it is key to undermining the forceful grip of racism and opening ourselves to true freedom of oppression, especially the oppression we hold against ourselves. Thank you for your inspiring wisdom, Angel. And thank you, listeners, for embarking on this work with us. I look forward to sharing with you again next time on Black Care Matters. Black Care Matters is presented by the Alliance of Black Nurses Association of Oregon, sponsored by the Oregon Center for Nursing, and was recorded at KBOO Studios here in Portland, Oregon. This episode was produced by Ida Hardin, with production support and mix mastering by Ramoy Phillip. Our executive producer and host, myself, Rashida Quinn. The Black Care Matters podcast website was designed by Brendan Quinn, with portrait art created by Ryan Alexander Tanner. Special thanks to Danae Hall of the Alliance of Black Nurses Association of Oregon, Kelly Castanegro, and our team at KBOO, Jezaniah Hawthorne, Zoe Ezekiels, and Selena Flores. This podcast would not be possible without the generous grant from Oregon Center for Nursing. Thank you to our grant team, Rick Allgeier, Don Schoenthal, and Callie Giesler. And here's a special invite to all of you, our listeners. Please engage with what you hear and learn on Black Care Matters. Did listening to an episode remind you of a racialized experience you had in healthcare? Did it strengthen your commitment to anti-racism in your own workplace or community? Did it bring up questions about how you can better speak out against white supremacy culture? Please reach out with your questions and comments at blackcarematters.org/contact. We would love to feature our listeners' feedback on a special episode of Black Care Matters. Your voice matters. Listen to Black Care Matters wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, why don't you leave us a review? Your words really do help us reach a wider audience. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you. We'll have a new conversation for you next month. Until then, remember, Black care does matter. It's a matter of how we make those words count.